Hi guys! I wanted to make a video about my past and some of the not so good parts of it, and then what I did to fix that and change it. I was about 18 and a half the first time that I got arrested, and what I got was a not a drop charge, which is basically a DUI, but since I was not 21, you can't technically get a DUI, so in a sense it is looked at almost worse than a DUI because you are under the age of 21 and driving under the influence. And let me explain the situation, because I think sometimes when people see the charges on a sheet, it looks a lot worse than what really happened, and sometimes it's vice versa. And this particular charge, Luke and I had split up right after I had Jackson. And it was my first time kind of like going out with my friends. I was at my friend's house. It was just down the street. I was living at my mom's at the time. We were drinking. I ended up getting this weird text from my friend saying, "Hey, Luke has something he wants me to give you." I hadn't heard from Luke really at all since I had Jackson. He was currently on the run from his parole. And I just hadn't heard from him or anything. And I think if I hadn't had a couple beers, I probably would have just been like, whatever, I don't care. Like, I'm so over, like, I was so upset that I had a newborn at the time and that I was even in this situation. So I probably wouldn't have given it much thought, but here I am over here like, oh, wonder what it is. Like, will somebody drive me over there? Just stupid. I go and my friend's there and he's like, hey, here's what it is. And then like Luke walked out and I was just like, what the heck? And he's like, I would just really like to talk to you and go over like everything, you know. So I end up having the friend that drove me down there take me back to the place, and that's where my car was, and I was planning on staying the night because I don't drink and drive despite what this charge was. And I go back down to the house and Luke's like, I don't really want to be like around a bunch of people, and he's like, let me drive your car, like let's go get some food. I think the only thing that was open at the time was McDonald's because that is where we went. We're in the McDonald's drive-thru, and next to McDonald's there's this middle school, and there's all these like cop cars there, and they had like flashlights out and stuff, and basically what happened was there were some teens that were vandalizing the school, so they were there. But Luke wasn't in the right state of mind and thought that I had set him up and that I had called the police and brought them there, which was not true. So we're like in the middle of the drive-thru, and he jumps out of the driver's seat and like jumps over this, like, it looks like this high of cement from the McDonald's side, but on the other side it's like a 13, 14 foot drop. So he jumps over, like basically going to where the cops are, like cracks his head open, and he keeps running through this thing, and these cops are like, what the heck's this guy doing? Like, they think he's the one that vandalized. So they stop him and find out that he had been on the run from parole, arrested him, and during that time, I took the car and just pulled it out of the drive-thru like into a parking stall, and I was just sitting there, and I called my friend again, and I'm like, hey, I need you to come get me. I'm stuck at McDonald's. I don't want to drive. I don't know what happened to Luke. My friend comes to get me, and as my friend's coming up, a cop comes up to my window. And Luke had told them, oh, my wife set me up, my wife set me up. She's over at McDonald's. I ended up coming over to me to see what was going on, and they're like, you're under arrest for vandalism. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yes, you need to get out of the vehicle, you're under arrest. And so I was kind of like, no, I'm not getting out of the car. Like, I didn't vandalize anything. Like, sorry, you got the wrong person. They ended up being pretty forceful. To sum it up, I had to get out of the car, and they gave me a breathalyzer, and I blew really low at this point because I hadn't even drank much, and then it had been such a long time. But basically, because the car was in the parking stall with the keys in the ignition, they gave me the DUI. And I don't think they would have if I wouldn't have been so like sassy and non-cooperative. It might have gone a little different. So since that was my first charge, I was able to do a plea of abeyance, and they put me on probation, and I had to do these like early recovery groups, ERG, and I was only on probation for a month. Luckily, the time that this happened, this was January of 2009, and it was like tax return season, and so we got our tax returns, and I paid off my fine in full, got off probation, and that was the end of that. So that was my first charge, and it ended up, like, it shows up for some reason on background checks, but it shows up as like dismissed. So then my second charge was a similar one. It was a minor in possession of alcohol, and this was in December of 2009. And the story here is even more bizarre. So my friend, Joey, he passed away in December. And it was a really, really hard thing to go through. He was very young, and he is actually how I met Luke. He introduced us. We went to his funeral, and after his funeral, we all went to this house, and everybody was drinking, and honestly, I was so upset by what had happened, and it had really messed with me that I literally only had like a beer. And that's, I mean, I wasn't there to get trashed. Like, I was so upset I didn't even want to drink. I didn't even want to be around people. And we had a sober driver with us, my friend Cody, and so we left this house and we're driving and we get pulled over. And the cop says, oh, you didn't do a proper turn signal back there, which he did. The cops sometimes just do that around here and maybe other places, I don't know. So he's like, I'm going to need everybody's IDs and yada, yada, yada. And my dad's an attorney, and my dad has always told me that the person driving, as long as they check out, they don't have any warrants, and if they get a breathalyzer and they blow zeros, the rest of the passengers are not to be questioned. And Cody did blow zeros. He was our sober driver. And the cop kept harassing us, and me being defiant kept saying I wasn't going to give him my ID, wasn't going to give him my information. And my friend in the back, she ended up freaking out. She's like, Melissa, just do it. Like, you're going to piss him off. Like, she got, like, super scared. Because I'm like, I can just call my attorney. Like, it's my dad, but I was like, I can just call my attorney. Like, I'm not. Like, it was just stupid. I think it's stupid to be harassed like that. I end up getting the breathalyzer, and I blew, like, a .001 or some stupid crap. Like, I swear it could have been, like, cough syrup. And I didn't go to jail that time like I did the time before. But I did get a ticket. And when I went to court for that ticket, I ended up having to serve 2 days in jail, which was over New Year's, which totally sucked. And pay like a $400 fine and yada, yada, yada. That was my second charge. And I'm not trying to dumb these down like, oh, I didn't really do anything wrong and I'm getting these charges, because I have done plenty wrong that I haven't been caught for. So really, I'm fortunate that these are the things that I have had on my record, because it could have been a lot worse just given what my past was like back in my 18, 19, and 20s. I really shaped up once I turned 20. Third thing was a speeding ticket. It was going like 20 over. That showed up on my record. And then the fourth thing was a littering charge from 2009. I threw a cigarette butt out the window, and the cop gave me a littering ticket. And I like had the nerve to try to fight that in court and be like, it's biodegradable, it's made of cotton. Everybody throws them out. But yeah, he hit me with a $380 fine. And it did show up on my record. I'm here to tell you how I expunged my record. And a lot of times for something, these aren't like serious charges, you wouldn't. But I started getting into the healthcare field in the nursing program, and they advised me that it would be better if I did get it expunged. So it had been 5 years. You have to wait 5 years for misdemeanors, and they were misdemeanors. So I started with doing the application online, and you pay $50. And then from there, it's just a complete mess. You have to wait for them to correspond back. Then you have to send another form. Then wait for them to correspond back. Then you have to go into the Bureau of Criminal Identification. I think it's where you get gun permits and different things like that. But you go in, and then you have to be in person, and then you have to submit like money for each of the charges that you want, yada, yada, yada. Then it has to go through this whole other process. Needless to say, this took like over a year. So then they send you like the certificate thing, and then you have to drive it around to the jail, your probation officer, each of the city police officers that arrested you, the district attorney or the county attorney or something like that, the courthouses, and like each of my charges were out of different courthouses, different things. Like it was such a mess. And then at the courthouses, you had to pay like another $100 and something. And I think like at one time I paid like almost $600 at the courthouse just so they would like file it. Like, all in all, it was close to $1,000, and everybody's like, oh, it's $50 to apply to expunge, yada, yada. No. it's a lot more than that because they charge you every time you do something. It's just crazy. But I basically got my record expunged, and I'm super, super happy, and it feels really good to have it done. But I wouldn't say that it ever interfered with me getting a job. I did have them on my record when I had my medical assisting job. I had that at the hospital. When I applied for the nursing program, they told me that I needed to for sure get it expunged because I wouldn't get a job as a nurse. And I had started the process, but it just took so long. And I actually had to start the process a couple times because I would be stupid and forget to send something back, and then the time would lapse, and then I'd have to redo it. I mean, it was just, yeah. I got my first job as an LPN at a nursing home, and it wasn't expunged at that time, and they didn't even question it. Like, I filled out on the application that I had the misdemeanors and whatever, and they didn't even care. And then my second job as a nurse was at an eating disorder clinic, and this was when the expungement was like supposedly done, but I hadn't received the actual notification that it was. So when I was applying, I was like, okay, this is the situation. I did have these misdemeanors. When you run the background check, they may or may not show up because I did do the final payments and submitted everything. I just haven't heard back. And he was like super thankful that I was honest with him. And when he did run the background check, it was clean, so that was cool. Off my record and it's done, and there's definitely nothing in my future that I would have on my record unless it was something like totally like by accident, like an accident, I don't know. If I hadn't changed a lot of things in my life, I think that it would have been really stupid to do the expungement process, and I'm going to tell you that too. Like, if you're thinking of getting your record expunged but you're still doing things that are illegal, it's kind of stupid and pointless to do it because it's a lot of time and a lot of money to go through that whole process, and once it's done, if you just accumulate more, it's just like whatever. So basically that's kind of my little story in a nutshell.